How do I power and run my fridges efficiently when I'm overlanding? Hi, I'm Duncan from overlandjournals.com. There are a number of different electrical systems out there where you can keep your fridges running efficiently, and whatever your budget is, there is something out there. For me, what's worked out is a very simple system, and that's worked for me over the years. And keeping it simple means that if I have to troubleshoot, no worries. With the limited knowledge I've got, I can troubleshoot and have it fixed. So simple is the way I go with a lot of my installments in my 4B. Something to keep in mind, and I need to mention, is whenever we travel overland, whether it's a short trip or extended remote trip, it's always the two of us, myself and my wife. Even if you're going in convoy, in this vehicle, it'll just be two people. So everything we've built into this 4x4 and whatever systems we've got in here, whether it's electrical or otherwise, it's around the requirements of two people. So in our 4x4, we run two fridges, a 15-liter fridge which sits inside between the front two seats, and that takes all our drinks, water, fizzy drinks and beers and so on, and that we run it around -1 degree centigrade. In the back here we've got this 60-liter fridge where we keep all our meats, veggies, dairy products and everything that needs to be frozen, and this we run around between -8 and -10 degrees centigrade depending on what we're carrying in here. To power my accessories, I've got a dual battery system in my 4x4, and all my accessories run off a 130 amp hour deep cycle battery. Now, one of the downsides of AGM batteries is that even though the capacity may say 130 amp hours, you can't really get an entire 130 amp hours because by the time it hits 50% capacity, it's pretty useless. You need to charge it right back up again. So you're looking at about 60 amp hours in my case. Now, there are newer technology batteries available in the market, but what I've got is an AGM, so I've got to work with this AGM. So with those restrictions and constraints in mind, I've tried to run my system as efficiently as possible so that I get uninterrupted power supply, especially to my fridges, to keeping my food fresh. As long as the engine is running, it's all systems go. The fridges work perfectly, the battery and the charging system within the 4x4 works perfectly, so that's easy. So the important part comes in when you get to a campsite and you park off for the day or park off for a couple of days. That's where it really matters how far the battery can be pushed without destroying it, and then what else I can do to keep the system going without any interruptions. So with the AGM battery, when it's fully charged, I can run both fridges at the same time continuously for about 8 hours. Now, I don't really need the center console fridge when I park off for the evening. So what I do is I switch that off. It still keeps my drinks cool though, and I'll tell you how I do that in a minute. So the 60-liter fridge on its own, off the AGM battery's power supply, can then run for about 16 to 18 hours without any interruptions. So if I'm going to switch off my center console fridge, the fridge that keeps all our drinks, you might wonder, how do we keep all our drinks cool throughout the night? Especially the beers, you're really got to keep them cool. So what I do is, it's all about keeping the system as efficient as possible and keeping the draw on the battery as low as possible. So what I do is, about 2 hours before we come to the end of the day where we're going to stop for the night, I push up the cooling on the center console fridge to about -6 degrees and let it really cool down. So by the time I switch off the fridge, then the drinks are cool enough, and evening temperatures, ambient temperatures, drop down fair bit, especially if you're in desert country, drops down quite a bit. So that coolness is maintained throughout the night and pretty much into early parts of the midday as well. So that way I'm able to get the maximum out of that fridge without having to run it, if that makes sense. Something to remember with fridges is the power draw happens only when the compressor is running. And the compressor runs only when the temperature inside drops and it has to kick in. So if we can maintain it so that the compressor runs as little as possible, what that means is there's that much less power draw on the electrical system. So a little later in this video, I'll talk about a few other things I do to help the compressor run as efficiently as possible. So to help the battery along, I also carry a 120 watt solar blanket. So as long as I've got sunlight available, I hook this on directly to the AGM battery, the deep cycle, and that helps it maintain its charge as well as keep the system running without having to run the AGM flat completely. Power draw comes is once you've just switched it on, and the compressor has to run continuously until it has come down to the set temperature. So that's where the biggest power draw comes. Once thereafter, the compressor gets into maintenance and it just maintains the temperature. So the very first thing I do before I set off on a trip is about 24 hours before I leave, I take the two fridges and I plug them into home supply. Let the temperatures come down. Usually within 2 to 3 hours or 4 hours, the temperatures have come down to where I want them to be. Then I throw in the food and the drinks and so on that I'll be carrying, and then I let it carry on for the remainder of the 24 hours, and then the temperatures will come down. So once I'm on the road and I've taken it off home supply, all the battery has to do is supply enough power to keep the compressor running, and which the compressor is doing is just maintaining that temperature. Secondly, to help the cooling along, before a trip, what we do is we vacuum pack all our meals, and then we freeze them in the home freezer. And then once it's frozen and once the fridge has reached its cooling temperatures, we then drop it into the fridge or the freezer in the 4x4. So that way, each meal for the day is vacuum packed. Now, I talked about this in detail in one of my previous videos. I'll leave a link above for you to go and check that video out. So keeping food frozen, that helps tremendously as well in keeping food fresh and putting a lot less stress on the compressor. So finally, to help the compressor along, I also chuck in a few of these dry ice packs. It's all about keeping the temperatures down in the inside of these fridges. So I chuck in a few of these which stay frozen at home when you're not traveling. And when you're about to set off on a trip, I throw these into the fridges, and that helps the temperatures inside the fridge to remain low. What that means is then the compressor runs that much less. And if the compressor runs that much less, then there is a lot less draw on the electrical system. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Please give it a thumbs up, everyone. And leave a comment behind. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. I love sharing information with the rest of the overlanding community. If you've got questions about the fridge setup that I just talked about, or if you've got just general questions from me, leave those comments behind too, and I'll do another video another time or answer them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Till the next time, bye for now.